Hey, stick around for this episode of the Tunepact Podcast. Our guest is Blind Adam from Blind Adam in the Federal League.
Hey, Blind Adam here. Stick around.
Welcome to the Tunepact Podcast. I'm your host, the punk rock pop, Lee Pierce. And today we are lucky enough to be joined by Adam from Blind Adam in the Federal League. Adam, thanks for joining us today. Can you take a minute to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. My name is Adam, Blind Adam, of Blind Adam in the Federal League, Chicago's premier anti-fascist rock and roll experience. It's a wonderful privilege to be here with you, my friend. There's a lot of wild, horrible stuff going on in the world, and we just try to do our best to highlight, what folks are doing to fight fascism in their communities through music and art, and it's a privilege to be here. Thank you again for having me.
Oh, well, and thank you for coming on. I love having, because I'm a kind of local, we're just a couple hours away here, kind of came up in the same state line punk scene, which has always been a great scene, a great community. So tell us about how you got started in music. How long you been in the industry?
Well, I'm 40 years old now, and basically, I mean, since the time I was a little kid, I always loved baseball and rock and roll, and I have, my parents have pictures of me with a little plastic guitar screaming Bruce Springsteen lyrics in the living room when I was a kid, and at a certain point, my folks always had music on in the house, and at a certain point, I started discovering music that I liked, my own music, and Dookie by Green Day was the first album that I ever purchased with my own money, mowing lawns in the neighborhood, and I think when I was maybe 13 or 14, my parents got me, probably 13 years old, my parents got me a guitar for Christmas, and a handful of guitar lessons, and I met the bass player from my very first band at the same music shop that we took lessons at. His was right before mine, so we'd be leaving as I was going in. And just kind of picked up a guitar and learned how to play a few, 3 or 4 chord Green Day songs, Rancid songs and stuff like that. And then found a few other weirdo punk rocker friends in school. And instead of trying out for baseball freshman year of high school, we started a punk rock band, and that's kind of been, that's been it ever since. And I haven't been consistently playing in bands the entire time since I was 14 years old, but I would say the majority of my life I've spent playing in bands and writing songs and playing guitars.
That's awesome. And like we were saying, the state line scene from Chicago up through, even all the way up to Milwaukee, has always been a really awesome scene. No gatekeeping, real inclusive. So the punk scene's always been about being outspoken. Was it just being part of the punk rock scene, especially this one in particular, or was there a specific time where you realized you could use your voice to make a difference?
Not even just punk rock. Like I said, my folks both listened to a lot of music and played a lot of music in the house. I mentioned Springsteen already, but also stuff like Neil Young and Bob Dylan, and stuff like John Prine, of course, and a lot of artists who used maybe folk music or country music or rock and roll or whatever, to some soul and blues and R&B, of course, too. But there was always something more than just, it wasn't just like bubblegum love songs, and there's nothing wrong with love songs, but I always, even when I was a little kid, I liked music that was about something. And I mentioned Dookie by Green Day, and even in that record, when I was a little kid, I would read the lyrics, and I understood that there was like a critique of the society that we live in happening in those songs, and they weren't just songs. And my dad was a teamster for 30 years in a freezer warehouse, and one of my earliest memories being a kid was, my dad working crazy amounts of overtime, or being worried about being locked out in a contract year or going on strike or whatever, and going to the union meetings. And I remember seeing like the first bombings of Iraq on TV when I was a little kid for the first Gulf War, and just thinking that, not really fully understanding what was happening. I was 4 or 5 years old, but I knew it was bad and wrong, and I knew that we shouldn't be blowing people up on TV, and I think once I got into punk rock, once I got into it a little bit more, and this is a band that we don't really speak of anymore because of the terrible actions of one of the founding members, but I found Anti-Flag when I was very young, and there would always be different bands, or not different bands, there would always be different organizations tabling at those shows, and obviously that project has been left behind in our legacy here, and Justin has done terrible things that he has taken zero accountability for. But at the time that I found them and the community around them of bands that used activism, it was almost more like activists that were using music rather than musicians that were using activism as a way to promote their music. Because using anti-fascist politics in your music isn't a great way to have a music career, but using music to spread a message of anti-fascism and to build community is a good way to do that. Music is a good way to spread that message. It's a good way to build community, and I think I saw that from bigger shows and even tours like Warped Tour. You would see that kind of stuff, and then you'd see that down into the very local DIY stuff that was happening in people's garages or VFW halls or whatever, and you see the anti-racist action table set up. The anti-war stuff that was happening in 2003 was a big part of the music scene back then, and it's always just kind of gone hand in hand for me. There's really no separating it in my mind.
Yeah, exactly. And it's same. I grew up listening to my parents' records. There was a lot of Neil Young, both Guthries, Springsteen, Johnny Cash, the stuff that spoke out, and it wasn't just about the music. It wasn't bubblegum, nothing, So, of course, then that led to me. So the punk I got into when I was young, it was all the Midwest profane existence stuff, all the anarcho-political stuff, like The Pissed, Oh Rotten, Filth, Code 13, all that stuff, Naked Aggression. So so same. It's always been one and one. It's always been, it wasn't like, oh, wow, they're getting political. No, it's like the bands I've listened to have always been that. So there's never really a turning point. I mean, for some of them, yeah, obviously when things happen, you got to react to them.
Right.
And you've never been a reactionary. It's always who you've been. With the more outspoken you get, obviously you're going to get pushback from the fuckheads that were pushing against, but if you had any issues with people that they were your comrades, they were your friends, and now because they're scared to speak out about the repercussions, whether it be actual physical harm, usually it's financial harm they're worried about. So if you had any issues with that, the louder you get.
It's hard. I don't know. It's hard to say because I feel like yes, in some ways. But not necessarily people that are people from the music scene or the music community. I feel like, for instance, so I grew up on the south side of Chicago, and, where you are in Wisconsin too, it's pretty common, especially amongst working class folks, white working class people, that there are people around that ride Harley Davidson motorcycles. Harley Davidson motorcycles are a staple in this part of the world for a lot of people that look like us, for sure. And I always liked them when I was a kid, and I always thought it would be cool to get a bike, and so I did when I was losing my vision. And there's we could get into a whole other story. The name Blind Adam comes from a motorcycle trip I took with Brian Keeneland from the Bouncing Souls. That's a different story for a different time, but I found some community in that world, and I found people who I thought were like-minded, younger punk rocker kind of, hardcore heavy metal kind of dudes that were into building bikes and, kind of approaching the traditional like motorcycle club culture and that scene and that aesthetic from like a, what I thought was kind of like an alternative kind of punk rock perspective, and I thought that was cool. And so I wanted to still ride my bike after I lost my vision, and I found these guys that would ride with a blind guy, and I joined up with this small club, and they were some of the biggest supporters of this Blind Adam and the Federal League project when it first started, and I would host shows at our clubhouse garage, and it was cool. But then in 2016 when Donald Trump started running for president, and then especially when he became the president, you definitely saw people in that world, like the whatever cap they had on their misogyny and their racism and their homophobia and stuff, whatever they were doing to try to keep that internal, Donald Trump like gave them an excuse to just let it all out and open it up. And so I struggled for several years trying to maintain friendships and connections to people who I saw going down that pipeline, or maybe they were always there, but they were just better at hiding it or whatever it was. But I spent several years trying to maintain those friendships and those contacts and trying to get people to understand that, being a bootlicker is not a good way to live your life, and supporting state violence in the cause of white supremacy is not a good thing to do. And, you can't be a big, tough, macho man while you got a boot in your mouth. But yeah, I lost a lot of, over the years. Like, I've always been anti-fascist. I've always been me. I've always been against imperialism, and I've always been for the working people. I've always been anti-racist. I've always stood up for LGBTQ plus people. There's never been a change in me, but I saw this drastic change in a lot of people who were maybe apolitical or whatever until Trump decided to run. And then, and then so on our first record, we have, we cover the song Chicago by Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, which was written in response to the trial of the Chicago 7 and Bobby Seale being bound and gagged in a courtroom. We have a few other songs on that record that are pretty clear about where we stand, but the album itself isn't inherently political, and there's like a lot of country influences on it. And then, the second record we did with Chris Barker, Chris 2 from Anti-Flag, before, obviously before we knew everything, but Chris is still a friend, but yeah, we did that record with him, and there was, we leaned a little bit more into it because of what was happening at the time. Really, like, the way I write songs is, I don't necessarily, or I never have before too much necessarily sat down and say, these are the topics I want to cover on this record. I would just kind of, write the songs that hit me, the topics that hit me in the moment. That's why a lot of songs are about like loss or, loss in terms of like friends and family dying or whatever. But, a lot of times I'll write in response to that. But yeah, as our message was getting more, I thought it was important to make our message more clear because of the things that are happening in the world and the way that I see certain people reacting to those things happening. Like, if you don't understand where we stand and you like our band, but you're also okay with kidnapping people or, attacking transgender people or, whatever the case may be, then you don't have a place at our shows. Then you shouldn't enjoy our records. So I wanted to be more clear about where we stood. I wanted to be more clear about not only like where we stand, but like how we see what's happening and, and how we see our place in it, and, and everyone else's, especially white people, especially calling out white people. And, I would say that it probably has, it has turned some people off, and I've lost friendships. I have people that I considered like family almost, I don't speak to anymore because they are, I don't have any kind of ideological purity test that I need anybody to meet before we can have a friendly relationship. However, if you are absolutely committed to white supremacy, if you're committed to fascism, if you're committed to not understanding the systems that are in place that cause so much harm to so many people, then, you know, there's really not a conversation to be had. And so that's a very long-winded way to say that, yes, it has affected relationships, and it has, but it also, I feel like, you know, it has also really solidified a lot of relationships with a lot of people too, you know, and it's opened a lot of doors. And yeah, and as far as within the music community, we don't really meet anybody within the music world that is like vocally or visually or outwardly against what we are doing or what we are saying. But it is harder to book tours. It's harder to get any kind of traction on social media. It is harder to, we can't even run ads most of the time because Meta will just like flag our ads as being too political, and even if it's just like a list of tour dates. So, you know, whatever. It's hard, but it's also, we get so much encouraging, like we get so much encouraging interaction from people at shows and online, and, you know, when people order from us, they send little notes with their orders and stuff. So it goes both ways, really.
Well, and it, like you said, though, it's how you always want the same way. Like someone will say something, I'll be like, in what world did you think I would be okay with what's going on and be okay with you being okay with that?
Right.
Like I've always been outspoken. I'm pretty fucking clear where I stand in the world, and it still shocks me the obliviousness of people. Like, what do you mean you don't like what's going on in the world? Like, you've known me for 45 fucking years. When have I ever said anything that this would be surprising to you? Like, and I think it's the same way both ways. Like you said, when it all first started happening, it just people realized it was okay to be and say that shit because now it was all right. A few people I've seen, I've only had one that I was like, oh wow, that it shocked me that turned that direction. Like, because nothing had ever, like, it had conversations the complete opposite. So it was one of those like, wow. But other than that, no, it's always been like, yeah, that's on brand. That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
So it's always surprising to me when, even before you changed your logo up and everything and just started calling yourself the anti-fascist punk band from Chicago, how anybody would be surprised, like if they're going to have a conversation with you and you shut them down about a topic, that they would be surprised because especially in the punk scene, obviously, yeah, there's some fucking bootlickers and shit in the scene. I don't know how that ever...
There's a lot. I mean, punk rock to me is nothing special. Like, there's nothing special about punk as far as like punk being particularly anti-fascist or punk being particularly progressive or whatever. Like, punk is just to me, punk, like, it used to be, I'm sorry that I interrupted you, but I used to think of punk rock as something special in our world for those reasons. But, you know, the older I get, the more I realize that, like, it is really just a fashion aesthetic and a music genre. And other than that, I mean, you have some of the biggest punk bands and labels and journalists and whatever, like, supporting something like Punk in the Park. And, you know, we exist within capitalism, so obviously we have to participate in it to some degree. But, you know, when you have a festival where it's out, you know, it's known, public knowledge now, that the owner and founder of this festival, the main organizer of it, made multiple financial contributions to Donald Trump's campaign and other right-wing causes. And I don't care what the financial amount was. I don't care what the dollar amount was. You know that that's what this guy's doing, and they are brutalizing our communities. They are rounding up indigenous people. They are rounding up black people. They're murdering American citizens. They're murdering green card holders. Who it doesn't matter what anyone's legal status is. They're murdering people in the street. You know, Silverio Villegas Gonzalez was murdered here in the fall. You know, you have Renee Good in Minneapolis, and there are a lot of great punk bands from the DIY level all the way to the top who are still outspoken and still have principles. But there's so many bands and so many people, and I get it to an extent because we don't have healthcare in this country, and it's so hard to have a career doing anything creative that you don't want to miss an opportunity to be on a big stage or to have your name on a big bill or whatever. But there's so many people and bands and organizations that are willing to look the other way when it serves their own personal interest. And, you know, it's very disappointing for me to see that in punk rock. It's disappointing for me to see that so many punk bands were quiet about Palestine and still are. You know, so many bands are willing to work with people who they know are actively supporting fascism here, supporting genocide, whatever it is, you know. And yeah, that's that wasn't even a question I was answering. I just kind of went off on a rant there, but yeah, that's how I feel about punk rock these days.
Oh, and I agree with you completely, because especially the scenes we grew up in, it wasn't, you know, it wasn't a community that it is now because it's online. So we have people that we consider in our punk community that will never meet, because they're in a different continent. Even it was that small group we grew up in, because in the Midwest, especially state line area, it was a safe place for us to go, that it was all like-minded individuals. I remember going to shows at the Alumni House and at the Pit and
The skate park in Rockford.
Yeah, and dragging skinheads out into the parking lot and beating the shit out of them. Like,
right, there was no question.
That was the scene. So back then, it wasn't just a fucking clothing style and a music genre. It actually was a community, but that was just because it was the one we knew. And now as we get older and the world gets smaller, we're seeing, oh, there's assholes in every community. It's the same way. It's just there's bullies, and they were the ones that were bullied, so they come to the punk scene so they can bully somebody else, so they can be the big man on campus kind of vibe. And we are seeing that more and more, well, because of our access to people now. And like you said, Punks in the Park and Brewhop Productions put a big fucking magnifying glass and a spotlight on it, because the bands that were the quietest, it seemed like, I don't know anybody's personal finances. I don't give a fuck. But it seems the ones that were the quietest about it were the ones that seemed to probably could have missed that paycheck and been just fine, or were the ones that could have dropped off the way Dropkick Murphys did. But they all stayed quiet. And yeah, I lost a lot of respect and stopped listening to a lot of bands this past year. And none of them, I mean, it was like, oh, you know, but at first it was like, well, that sucks. Guess I'm never listening to them again. But real quick, you turn around, and we all get that, though. We're like, well, I never liked that one fucking song anyway. So you get the little judgmental thing we all do. But yeah, no, that shined a big spotlight and magnifying glass on the scene. And the amount of fucking Gen Xers that just never fucking got it blows my mind. Like I said, I'm going to be 50 in a couple months. I got adult sons. I got a grandson. And I just it's because it's one of those where, like, I only hang out with good people, and like I own my own business, so I only work with good people. You couldn't pay me $1 billion to work with some asshole. I like my life. I'm comfortable. It doesn't mean that much to me. My personal beliefs and comfort means way fucking more than money ever will. So it's nice. I've gotten to this place I've surrounded myself with. So it's like I do all my work from home, so I'm lucky enough to be able to surround myself with good people. So it just blows my mind when I get online and I see the fucking ignorance, because all I can think of is, like, we grew up on the same street. We had the same teacher for fucking 8 years. What happened? who fucking hurt you? Tell me, point them out. You know, because it's like it just blows my mind. I don't understand. Yeah, but like you said, it used to be like, oh, they're punk. Okay, they're gonna be cool. We can hang, and it's no. It's not that way anymore. It's still, it doesn't matter what culture you're in, what music you listen to, what color you are, who you are. It doesn't matter anymore. You really gotta fucking do your diligence. Well, you don't even really need to research because they'll tell you pretty fast and pretty loud how
Yeah.
stupid they are.
Oh, for sure. And like even a lot of punk bands who I would think would probably like generally align with how you or I feel about most things. What's even worse than it's to me it's almost worse than putting the MAGA hat on, or like it's worse than being a Proud Boy or whatever, is to just try to just like keep your mouth shut and keep your head down and play your song that is like vaguely about whatever, like fuck authority, or being like I don't know, we're different and we're gonna fight back. Like, fight back against what though? What are you doing? Like, can you name the problem, and can you call out a genocide? Can you stand up for trans people? Can you be clear about the fact that ICE is a fascist organization that's kidnapping and murdering our neighbors? Like, excuse me, but yeah, so that's I think so many people, and again, I understand it to a degree, because if you get to a point where you are in the music scene, you're in the music business, and you've been struggling and you've been touring and you've been putting out records and doing all this stuff, and then you get to a point where you don't have to have a job anymore, and you're making your money touring and you're making your money putting out records. That is so precarious. And we don't have healthcare in this country. Housing is extremely affordable. So if you have to start worrying about, like, if I actually use my voice, or if I say no to a festival because of my principles, is that going to make it so that I can't do this project anymore because I can't afford to, because everything is so goddamn expensive? And, like, I understand that these are all choices and these are all thoughts that everyone has to consider, but, like, maybe it's okay to not prioritize your own comfort. Maybe it's okay to not prioritize your own career, because I mean, as a band, we've never gotten to the point where we're actually getting paid. Everything that we do with the band, the money is either raised for some mutual aid cause, or it just goes back into the band so that we can keep doing the band, and we've done big tours and we've put out records that have sold all the copies and are out of print, and we don't make money. It would be nice if we could, but I would rather have to keep things the way they are and struggle to keep the band going, and know that every show that we play, we have our integrity and our principles intact. And if we're able to, like, raise a couple $1,000s for a mutual aid project and let someone know that there's an organization they can be a part of to help their community, that means more to me than, like, being asked to go on tour with Bad Religion or whatever, Not to say we've ever been asked to go on tour with Bad Religion, but I would rather keep my integrity than, like, be offered to play Punk in the Park.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Oh, excuse me. But like you said, art's not supposed to be safe, especially not good art. It doesn't matter what it is you're speaking out about. What, I'm not talking about obviously being on their side, but art's not supposed to be safe. It's not always supposed to be pretty. And the amount of artists that are just riding the fence nowadays, that I grew up, like, I think their music was counterculture. It was us against them. And now they're like, we're just going to be quiet. You can't be on the fence. That's not a thing anymore. Because without damning what the right is doing, well, it's like the saying, if there's 11 people sitting at a table and one of them is a Nazi, there's 11 Nazis.
Right.
It's you can't be, there is no innocent bystander anymore. You can't be quiet. I mean, well, you could be quiet, but you gotta. Oh, I'm just pisses me off talking about it.
Yeah, well, I mean,
God,
yeah,
I
you could.
literally just deleted someone off Facebook and out of my life that I've known for 30 fucking years yesterday because of they posted something about I see both sides. Fuck you.
Yeah,
Fuck you then.
right. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I don't know. I don't mean to spend the whole this whole interview just like talking shit about like the establishment of punk as like, you know, and I'm not talking about the punks that are having the DIY bookstore shows and the, you know, the basement shows and the people that are in the streets doing the thing. I mean, you know, I'm talking about the professional level, like the professional class of punk, is kind of more, and the people who, you know, the people who are going to those kind of shows and stuff, I guess, is who I'm talking about more. But yeah, it has been disappointing for me these last 10 years or so, in particular.
Well, yeah, because when it comes to the bigger bands like that, they're established. They've been, and none of these are like, you know, we're not talking about some, you know, group of 19-year-old kids that hit it big and they landed a spot on Punks in the Park. We're talking about bands that were doing this before we knew what punk rock was.
Yeah, the
And
headliners.
like they've been around long enough, even if they don't feel comfortable. Some people just don't feel comfortable because of being a public figure. You got to worry about your safety, getting doxxed. If you've got a family, like you've got to worry about that stuff. And I get that, but most of them are at the point, at least all the ones that we're talking about, are the ones that have been in the industry long enough. They know what they're doing, and it's not that they're even riding the fence. They made a decision to still be a part of stuff like Punks in the Park, or you even see bands that like people start going. So what that my doom scrolling now is I just try to stay out of comment sections because holy fuck are people stupid.
Well,
And,
yeah, and half of that,
but
there's a good chance that half of those comments are bots.
well,
You
exactly.
know.
And the thing is, I see these bands, and no, not just bands, but just all people, that these people start going off and fighting in their comments, and they don't get in there and reply or shut it down or delete these fucking people. And these are people that would consider normally good people. I know they're anti-fascist. They hate what's going on, but I know you're getting those fucking Facebook or Instagram notifications. Your shit's blowing up. You got 200 comments in an hour. Obviously, something's going on. Get in there and clean it up, or at least show your side. And this ignorance of just turning it's not even turning our cheek, it's turning a blind eye to it, and like it's not going to go away. And there's people like me and you that are going to look at this and say, no, this is bullshit. If you're not calling it out, you're part of the fucking problem. And this is
Yeah.
going on because this is in your comment section. This is literally your backyard. You have control over all of this. Do
Yeah.
something about it. And
That's one thing I appreciate about Dropkick Murphys is that they. I'm sorry, you sound like you were going to say something else. Sorry about that.
no, go ahead.
But yeah, like Dropkick Murphys is a band who I feel like for a long time, whether they meant to or not, they kind of fostered an audience of like Thin Blue Line, flag waving, like bootlicking kind of bros, and you know, at a certain, you know, there was a lot of like red hat MAGA chuds at Dropkick shows for a long time, and I don't know what the internal conversations were. I don't know if Ken Casey decided this on his own or what, but at a certain point, I think they recognized that if they don't make it very clear where they stand on these things, it's just going to be assumed that they are a part of it too, because why wouldn't you? And, you know, I think it's great that they've taken, you know, over the last few years, I don't know when it was, back in 2020 or 21, they put out that album of like Woody Guthrie archives, and, you know, that was cool. And then they've been very outspoken the last few years, and I really appreciate that. I think it's something that if you get to stand in front of hundreds or thousands of people, you know, 100 nights a year or more with a microphone in your hand, and you're a white man in America, you could take, you know, 1 minute of that 30 minutes to an hour and a half or whatever your set is to make it clear that, like, genocide is not okay. Fascism is a problem that needs to be addressed immediately. That, any injury to any marginalized person is an injury to all of us. Like, there's no reason, even if that's not what your songs are about, even, you can take a moment to make it clear where you stand in this time that we're in right now.
Yeah, exactly. Because Dropkick, I've been a fan of theirs forever. I mean, geez, we played some of their music at my wedding, and I got grandkids, so like I've got Dropkick tattoos. And yeah, there was a while there because of their fan base that I was starting to kind of worry, and I was like, no, like the songs mean what I know they do, but because them and there's a few of the other kind of like epitaph bands in that same era, like early 2000s that kind of almost became like frat bro punk. Was like half their hat backwards fucking frat boys were like that was half their crowds, and it just started to make you wonder. I mean, like their Pennywise, there's a couple others that their target audience was like, "Ugh, I'm not going to go to one of those shows. That's not my kind of vibe." And
Right.
yeah, Dropkick dropped the hammer and was like, "No, this is what we are. You're gonna." I mean, they started calling people out in the shows. I mean, I love seeing those videos of Ken going off. He was like trading shirts with the guy. He's like, "No, you're not wearing that shit in my show. Here's a free concert T-shirt, though." Like doing it
Yeah.
his own way. I love seeing that shit. And it's the funny thing is like they're so blatantly obvious with what their beliefs are that people still come to the shows, and he has to call out bad behavior. Like, what fucking idiot's wearing any red hat? Like, I wouldn't wear a Badgers hat to a fucking Dropkick show. Like, who the fuck's gonna wear a MAGA hat to a Dropkick? Like, it just shows the ignorance too, and that self-absorbed self-importance that who they are and what they believe is more important than anybody else on the planet, even other people that believe the same shit. It just blows my mind.
It's wild, man. We did, at the end of 2023, we did like most of the month of December with the Bouncing Souls, Catbite, and then 7 Seconds on the East Coast. And there was at least one MAGA hat at most of the shows. And we would get heckled a little bit. I mean, we did great on that tour. We sold a ton of merch, and we met a lot of people, and we've made friends that we still keep in touch with on that tour. And every night we'd have people at the merch table telling us about like what community defense organization or mutual aid organization they're part of, or what they're doing with their neighbors to make sure everybody has what they need, or they're helping with undocumented communities, or they're doing stuff to make sure that trans people get the gender affirming care that they need, or whatever it is. But yeah, there was always a handful of assholes, and we would do a thing at those shows, and we had like a giant on that tour. I'll have to send you a picture with the backdrop too. I'll include it in the email. But we had like a giant 10-foot tall by 8-foot wide backdrop of it's a boot with a snake wrapped around it and the head chopped off, and the head has a MAGA hat on and it's licking the boot, and and underneath it says anti-fascist punk rock. And we would do a giveaway at the show. We would do a hat buyback program, and I would announce from the stage before we played the song "One for the Bootlickers." If anyone at the show had a red MAGA hat on, they could come over to the merch table and trade it in for one of our hats, and you'd look better, you'd feel better, and you have a better outlook on life. And no one took us up on it. But a few people did leave. We were the opener, so some people would just leave the show and not stick around the rest of the night because of us. And that was always fun. But yeah, I mean, most of these people are just, most of these like MAGA people that show up to shows or whatever, like, they are abject cowards. They are people who they want to piss people off and make people uncomfortable, but as soon as they get confronted in any way, they fold very quickly. And it's very funny. It's I don't know. It's just it's a lot of bluster. And
Oh yeah. Well, and Bouncing Souls, that's another one that they've never been. anyone that knows them knows who they are and that they're political, but they've never been overtly political with their lyrics. They're not like some anarcho punk or anything like that. But
Right.
like, I remember, God, I saw them in Beloit in the '90s. I don't, if maybe '95 or '90. I think it was for the Good, the Bad, and the Argyle
Oh yeah, real early.
tour. I can't remember. Like they had the old tour bus. It was a Jewish community housing van. I've
Yeah.
got a picture of it somewhere. But like even back then, I think it was Pete. I think his if you'd ask him like to sign something, he'd do a squatter rights symbol on it. That was his signature. Like so, like I've always known them. To me, Bouncing Soul. People think they're more like I want to say pop, but they're more on the side like more radio friendly like Dropkick and stuff like that. But they've also always to me been more like on the anarcho political side, just because I've met them. I know who they are and what they're about, and but that had to have been a fun tour with them. We'll have to talk later. I got to hear the stories about Bouncing Souls. I've liked them for like I said, it was real early. I might have been '95. I think I saw them '95 or '96.
Yeah, they're the best. They're the best dudes, and I mean they take us out on tour, and I'm wearing a Free Palestine T-shirt on stage every night, and I open the show every night. We open 2+ weeks of being on tour with them, and the first thing that I scream into the microphone every night is Free Palestine, and they have our backs and they support us, and I've nudged Brian a little bit a few times to maybe be a little more clear about some things, but he's got the Iron Front Arrows sticker on his bass, and they keep good company, and the politics are in their lyrics if you're looking for them. I just think, for me, I guess I have to be more directly explicit about it for myself. But I love those guys, and we've learned so much from them over the years, and they've treated us like family since the first time I met those dudes.
Well, yeah, and like you're one that's definitely you're loud. You use your voice as often as you can, whether you're on stage or not. Obviously, when you're on stage and you've got whether it's 10 people or 10,000 people, you've got the mic. You can make a point, whether people want to hear it or not. What's some things that artists can do to use their voice when they're not on stage? And to set that example.
I mean, I think social media is something that I struggle with. I don't really like it anymore. I used to like Facebook as a way to keep in touch with people and be aware of events and things that are going on in the community, tours that are coming through and whatever. But I don't really use Facebook at all anymore for anything. We still have an active profile for the band, but it's just everything kind of goes through Instagram and excuse me. Obviously, there's no perfect way to constantly be getting the right message out there at all times or whatever. But we have these platforms. I think anyone that has a platform at all in this time that we're in, with so many people being harmed by the state at all times, like I think it's important to reiterate what your positions are and to express solidarity with communities that are under attack, and let organizations that are on boots on the ground doing the work set up a little bit of let them take up a little space on the merch table at your shows. Maybe if you have a mailing list, amplify voices of people who are trying to spread awareness of the most dire needs of our communities. Do that in your mailing list. I mean, maybe charge $5 extra for your shirts and donate that money to an individual or a cause that needs it. There's so many things right now that it's hard for me to point anyone in one particular direction, but one thing that I try to do, and I've tried to learn a lot, especially since 2020, when it feels overwhelming, the most important thing you can do sometimes is just go talk to your neighbors. Put your phone down, stick it in your back pocket or whatever, and go knock on a couple doors, or just say hello to people that are walking their dogs, and get to know the people in your direct community, and find out what kind of stuff you can work on with them, and and then talk about that. We all have these music communities. Talk to the people that come to your shows about what's going on and what they might need help with and what you need help with, and what can we work on together. Show up wherever you are listening to this. If you're in the United States of America, there's a good chance that at some point in the not too distant future, DHS, ICE, Border Patrol, whatever is going to be trying to kidnap people in your community. So get a whistle and put it around your neck and make sure the people in your community have them, and just know what to do. And if you don't, send me a message and I'll point you in the right direction. I don't know everything, but I actually spend a lot of my time trying to learn and understand as much as possible. And it is overwhelming, and it feels overwhelming because it is, but it doesn't feel as overwhelming when you start talking to people and doing stuff. And just don't fall into this idea that like, oh, we're cooked, so we might as well just not pay attention to protect our own mental health or whatever. Like, no one should be able to withdraw into themselves and forget about what's going on to everybody else, because it's going to come for all of us. So the more we stand together and fight now, the less we will have to do it alone later. And,
you're in it. Like, you live this, you breathe this. This isn't you just, I'm going to try to make a point on a podcast. Like, this is why I was glad when you reached out. Like, I want you on to talk about this. You're not just outspoken. You live this. This is important to you. It's not like you're just speaking out for someone else. You're speaking. This is just you and who you are. It's like your whole life is like one big doom scroll. What do you do to like with this much? Because it is, you're almost like kind of the same vibe as like, the Sin Eater. Like, you take on all this, and I know you're an empath. So like, how do you stay positive? Like, it's gotta just the average person, if you've got a soul, that just being alive today, fucking, it's draining and it's hard to wake up. What are you doing, like, to keep yourself positive and motivated and not to let all this shit just beat you down?
Well, I would argue that my life is not a doom scroll at all. I think one of the reasons that I want to fight for a better world, and one of the reasons that I think it's so important that we all do, is because this is such a beautiful world. It's beautiful to look outside and see snow on the ground. It's beautiful to see the sun shining. It's beautiful to pick up a guitar and and play it and pass it to a friend and hear what they play, and to grow food, to grow food that you can share with your neighbors. And that's what we do. We grow a bunch of food here. We share everything we can with our community. We accept help from people because, one thing that I like to emphasize too in the punk rock world, when people talk about getting involved, a lot of people want to talk about charity and, we're going to have a charity show. Absolutely not. I do not ever want to participate in any form of charity for me or towards me or from me to anyone else. The principle of mutual aid is the principle that we try to live by, and it is an idea that cooperation is as much, if not more, a part of human nature than competition is. And I can't live a decent life if I don't have help from my community, and my community isn't going to be decent, and the people in it aren't going to be able to have decent lives if I don't participate and help as well. This is a two-way street, and that goes with music. When you're on tour, people need to help you book shows. When they want to come through your town, you got to help them out. When a band is coming through, you buy a t-shirt or a record if you can, or give them a place to stay. So we already all know how to do this. It's just a matter of understanding that, we can... I spend way too much time on my phone. Absolutely. I need I need to chill out. I've had a lot of conversations with my wife lately about putting the phone down. Part of that has been it's wintertime and I've been sick. But, you know, after Renee Good was murdered, that night we were out in the streets marching in Chicago, and there's 10 different vigils that I heard of just in the Chicago area. The one that I went to had thousands of people at it. And then, you know, you see people come together and stand up and look out for each other. There's people there with hand warmers. There's people there giving out hot chocolate. There's people there passing out blankets to the older folks and stuff. And that's how it always is. I was riding my bicycle in Chicago over the summer with a big Palestinian flag flying off the back of it. And I was headed downtown towards the lake to meet up with a friend for a couple beers and sit by the lake and smoke a joint maybe. And I was sitting at a red light, and a couple rode up next to me on their bicycles, and they said, "Hey, are you headed to a protest?" And I just kind of laughed, and I said, "Every day is a protest." And they kind of laughed too, and they said, "Well, we were," one of them had a keffiyeh on, and they said, "Well, we were actually at a protest earlier today, but we're on our way to the beach now, and, you know, we need a little break sometimes to experience joy." And the only thing I could think to say was, like, of course you should go experience joy, and that's why I'm out riding my bike, going to meet up with a friend and enjoy the day. And this joy, you know, there's so much joy to be had here in this short amount of time that we have on this planet. That is why I want to fight. That is why I want to fight for a better world, because this is a wonderful place. This is a beautiful place. When people say, when they're fed up and they say, "I hate this world," or I hate people," or whatever, like, I understand the idea to feel that way for a moment, but I mean, I can really say that in my time on this planet, I've experienced some pretty tough things. You know, I lost most of my vision when I was 22, almost 23 years old. I've had the normal hardships of a human life. You know, I'd say, and I've also had a lot of things that I'm very fortunate to have experienced. I'm very privileged to be in the positions that I'm in a lot of ways. But yeah, it's not like doom and despair for me at all. Really, I'm pissed off because we could have it so good here, and instead we have, like, literal pedophiles trying to kill us with armies of, like, racist goons. And you know, it's really upsetting. But I'm not, even when I'm having a bad time, I never want to give up, because there's way too much to fight for.
I gotta tell you, this has been a lot of fun today, man. I can't tell you how much I needed. Like, you're so fucking positive. You're a good person. You really do a lot of good work, and your positivity really is infectious, because I am one of those people lately. I don't know how many times a day I either mumble to myself or out loud, "I fucking hate people. Period." Like, I'm sick of all of it. And just here, like, I'm gonna get choked up, like, dude, like, thank you. Like, no, you just, the way you put it, like, I needed to hear that today, and I hope it hits somebody else too, because that's why I wanted you on. You're an amazing human being. I mean, you're a frickin' national treasure. I appreciate the hell out of you. So what have you got coming up this year?
Well, we got a handful of songs. We got a handful of songs that we're kicking around right now that I want to get in the studio as soon as possible and record them. I don't know if it's going to be an album or like an EP or The Fields We Know is our most recent full length, and that album, we sold the last physical copies of it that we had at Fest in Gainesville last year in the fall of 2025. So I'd love to get that album repressed. And I'd love to repress it with a handful of new songs, whether it's, again, like, whether it turns out to be an album or what, I'm not sure, but we don't have a lot of money. We're sitting on about $900 of band money right now, so if there's anyone from any record labels watching this that want to take on an anarchist, anti-fascist punk rock band, please send us a message. But yeah, we're gonna try to do that. We did our last record with Pete from the Souls. The one before that we did with Chris Barker, and I think we're gonna try to work with those two dudes in some capacity for this next thing. And then we're supposed to play Pooza Fest in May, and then we're planning a little tour around like the Northeast. So hopefully between now and May, it's still possible to get from Chicago to Canada and back, but we'll see, I guess. And then this is like a long shot, not really a long shot. I think I'll get the grant, but this is a big project that's going to take some time. But if you're familiar with Howard Zinn's A People's History of the United States, or Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz's Indigenous People's History of the United States, I just submitted a grant proposal to the city of Chicago for an artist grant that I've gotten before. We did a music video called Chicago, A History of Resistance, which I highly recommend everyone check out if you want a little bit of, put a little wind in your sails for this fight that we are in right now, and understand that we're fighting the same fight that people have been fighting for over 100 years or more, But just check that video out, Chicago History of Resistance. That was paid for by a grant that I got from the city of Chicago, and I applied for that same grant again to do A People's History of Chicago Baseball. So the Federal League is an old baseball league that only existed for a couple of years. That's where that band name comes from. And I want to highlight, stories from the Negro Leagues, from small independent like community teams, and kind of player managed teams, and kind of early 20th century, and up till now too, I guess, but like really like early 20th century baseball history in the city of Chicago, because it was really destroyed by white supremacy and capitalism in Major League Baseball. And I would like to show people that a better world is not only possible, but in some ways, not to be nostalgic, but there are some beautiful things that have existed before that can exist again, that have been destroyed by the same systems that we're fighting against now.
And they will be. And that's what I keep that's what keeps me getting out of bed every day, is it's temporary. We know things will get better. And I just fear for how many people are going to get hurt or killed before that, but I know things will get better. I can't say I hope, I have to say I know. And like I said, what you're doing is amazing. I can't wait to see all these projects. I didn't know anything about that, so I'm excited about all of these. This is cool to hear. And again, thank you so much, Adam, for what you do and for being a guest on the show today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. Solidarity forever.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, everyone, thank you for tuning in. Say thanks to Adam. Go check him out immediately. And buy his merch. Where can they get your merch?
Yeah, we have including this. This is a shirt that we made during Operation Midway Blitz in Chicago. It says "Abolish ICE, Destroy Fascism." We've got a few of these left on our website. And we're always throwing as much band money as we can towards local organizations here in Chicago, or our friends and comrades up in Minneapolis right now, or by the time this podcast airs, hopefully they've gotten a break. But the website is www.blindadamandthefederalleague.com. There's a bunch of cool souvenirs on there. We got a live record out from DCPC Live that we have a few copies of still, so check that out. That was a really fun show. Yeah, thanks again for having me. It really means a lot to be here. Thank you for the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, everybody, thanks for tuning in. You heard it. Get over to www.blindadamandthefederalleague.com. Get your merch now and help support local artists. And as always, please like, subscribe, and share, and give me some feedback. I always want to know how I'm doing. And as always, please have fun and be nice to each other, because if you're not, there's no fucking point. Have a good time.
Absolutely.